Between the crappy weather lately, a crazy work schedule, and having a cold, my flying this month has definitely suffered. But I've been doing a fair amount of armchair flying, which is basically the next best thing to staying current, and that essentially inspired this video. So something I like to do on crappy weather days is pull the weather and decode it. So here's a METAR from the other day with the TAF. So you want to pause the screen and decode this one. It's pretty awesome. Snowstorm. And here's a GFA with the classic winter warm front. That's filled with freezing rain and icing conditions. You don't want to go flying in that. So with the internet, we have some amazing resources for armchair flying these days. When I started in the mid-90s, before the internet was widely available, it was actually an aviation-related dial-up bulletin board that got me connected with the flying community. Now, if you're younger than 30, you probably don't even know what a BBS is. But now, we take it for granted how easily we can get access to almost any info in any medium. And since you're on YouTube, let's start there. As we all know, the signal-to-noise ratio is pretty poor. There's a lot to wade through to get to the good stuff. But there is some pretty awesome aviation-related stuff on YouTube, and here's a few of my favorites. I gotta start with Jason Shappert over at m0a.com. When I went through a period of not being current, the old getting married, buying a house, and having a baby thing sort of took a hit on my schedule for flying, and went for a couple years without flying. But I definitely got through with guys like Jason. He's got an amazing pile of free videos and all kinds of awesome stuff. And then if you choose to, he's got lots of great paid products. I highly recommend looking into Jason's products and services. I can't say enough about him. And then another Jason is Jason Miller. He runs the Finer Points of Flying podcast. I discovered it late. I think a lot of his recording was done in the mid-2000s, but I started listening to it in 09, 10. And he has an amazing free full-length podcast. He's on YouTube as well, but not as much as with the podcast. And I think he's actually now the voice of ForeFlight. So I don't know a lot about what he's doing now exactly. I'm still actually getting through his podcast, believe it or not, because he has got so much. I've listened to literally hundreds of them, and I think there's still another 100 I've got to listen to that are 10 minutes to half hour long, and they're all really solid, good stuff. And then as far as private YouTubers are concerned, FSX404 was one of the channels I found early on. This guy's put a lot of work into some really good production. He started off with sim-specific videos, and then he started doing actual flying videos, and he always does a solid job explaining what he's doing, talking through procedures and so on. I think with the Google Plus name-changing commenting system thing, something's changed now where his channel is now under his real name, but I think you can still look up FSX404 and you'll find tons of great videos that he's done. And a newcomer who's really done well is Mr. Aviation 101. He's a young, low-time private pilot that documented all of his training, and he shares full, unedited flights. Now, he presents very well, and he sounds like an instructor, and I think his plan ultimately is to become an instructor, but it's worth noting he's not currently an instructor. So when you're watching his videos, just keep that in mind. He's working really hard, and his airmanship is getting there, but he still doesn't add context or self-analysis to his videos, so just be aware of that when you're watching. For instance, this is a video where he's demonstrating stalls, but he's using quite a lot of aileron, which obviously is a no-no. You can get yourself in trouble with slow flight as well if you use aileron as opposed to rudder to pick up a dropped wing. So you just want to be aware of things like that with any videos on the internet. Just make sure you understand the context of what you're watching. And then there's Guido Warnecki. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. He's an awesome professional pilot that shares essentially unedited videos of flying turboprops and corporate jets, like Cessna Citations and King Airs. He has full ATC audio, and he adds context with overlay text, which helps to illustrate procedures and so on. His videos are very watchable. He also often points out his own minor errors to show his process of reviewing and debriefing. I hadn't seen his videos before I started making mine, so it was very vindicating to see a pro doing essentially what I was doing, although I generally have more errors to point out than he does. But every pilot makes mistakes, and the best pilots are not afraid to admit their mistakes and work to correct them. And this is the kind of attitude that I definitely want to try to exemplify, and Guido clearly feels the same way about it. And then as far as books are concerned, there's definitely some really awesome ones. The Killing Zone is a must-read. It is kind of depressing initially, but it gets really progressive and explains a lot about what you can do to essentially get yourself through the most dangerous part of your flying career, which for any pilot statistically is between hours 100 and 350 total time. Sounds weird, but if you read the book, it's amazing how it breaks it down. It was also depressing, obviously, for guys like me. It can take 10 years just to get even close to 350 hours, so I'm still working toward that, and I've been flying for almost 20 years. And then to cheer yourself up after that book, I can't say enough about Bob Hoover's Forever Flying. If you don't know who Bob Hoover is, look him up. He is the pilot of pilots. I mean, I think even guys like Chuck Yeager, everybody sort of hands down agrees Bob Hoover is the man. And he's just an unbelievable person. And this book really gets into, right from the beginning of his flying to modern day, he's the man. He's truly my ultimate pilot idol, and this is one of my favorite flying books, so get it. Social media wise, I'm not on Facebook. I know I'm gonna have to suck it up and do it eventually, but I have been using Twitter, and that's for aviation specifically, and I've had a lot of great sort of contacts and really relevant info, so check it out. Twitter, I mean, just one example is Carleen Pettit is someone that I met through Twitter, and I was honored to be featured on her blog as one of Friday's Fabulous Flyers. Carleen's pretty amazing. She's an airline captain, an author, and a blogger. You definitely have to check out her blog. So I'm running kind of long here, so I'm just going to end the video with a screenshot of my iPad mini. Obviously that's a whole other subject, but here's my favorite aviation apps. I'll put some info in the description below for links and so on about some of my favorite apps, and I'll put links below about everything else I've talked about here. Obviously I barely scratched the surface on this armchair flying subject, so maybe we'll get into that again at some later point, but I'm going to stick with flying videos for the most part, but this has just been a bad flying month for me, so I was doing some armchair flying, so there you go. Anyways, as usual guys, I'm a private pilot doing my best to try to stay current. I'm not an instructor, but I make my videos for self-analysis purposes. I'm happy to share it, and any positive feedback I always welcome. So keep on keeping your flight chops sharp, guys.